Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Michael Carbone. I'm a business and immigration attorney in Staten Island, New York. Today, I want to talk about setting up your private practice and whether you should choose a professional service corporation or a professional service limited liability company. Now, before I dive into this topic, if you have any questions or you want to start a conversation, please drop a comment below. Otherwise, if you want to set up a formal legal consultation with me, visit us at carboneattorneys.com. We have a button in the top right corner of our website. Click it, fill it out, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. So when it comes to setting up your private practice, you have several options, but the two most common options are the PC or the PLLC. So I'm gonna cover some important aspects about setting these businesses up, running them, the paperwork involved, maintaining compliance, so that you have an understanding of which one makes more sense for your particular situation. So let's start with formation. Regardless of whether you choose to set up a PC or a PLLC, you must first go through the New York State Education Department. That has to happen. You cannot circumvent that process, or you risk having your filings rejected at the Department of State. Both entities go down the same route. The fees are a little bit different, but you do need to go through the Education Department. Once those approvals come in, you will file your entities with the New York State Department of State. Now, the PLLC has articles of organization and the PC has a certificate of incorporation. Essentially, very similar documents, different names, but the contents are mostly similar. Once those entities are filed, you'll send certified copies back to the Education Department, but that ends the process from a formation perspective for the PC. With the PLLC, you do need to comply with the publication requirement. Now, we've discussed this in previous videos, but ultimately you are publishing in 2 local newspapers for 6 weeks, announcing the formation of your business. PCs do not have that requirement. And of course, this comes with additional fees. If you are in New York City, Manhattan is the most expensive from a publication perspective, and the other boroughs are close, but much cheaper than Manhattan. So next, let's talk about governance. How are these entities managed? What's the paperwork involved after you form the business? With a PLLC, you have the operating agreement. The operating agreement basically lays out how the business is managed, who the owners are, when distributions are made, how profits and losses are calculated. It goes through the full gamut of how the business is run, but operating agreements are pretty lenient. There aren't too many requirements under the New York LLC law, so you do not have to strictly comply with the legal requirements as much as a PC does. You don't need to appoint a board of directors, you don't need officers, you don't need any of those formalities. So it's pretty straightforward when we're talking about PLLCs. Now, on the other side, the PC, you will need to adopt bylaws that similarly lay out how the business is run and the responsibilities of the shareholders and the officers and directors, and you must elect a board and you must appoint corporate officers like presidents, vice presidents, treasurer, secretary. Those roles need to be appointed when you are handling the initial paperwork for the PC. One caveat with PCs is the paperwork is much more involved. You must keep corporate minutes, you must manage a corporate book, you have to make sure all of the actions taken by the PC are recorded in the corporate records, whereas PLLCs are a bit more lenient from that perspective. I'll briefly touch on taxation. I'm not a CPA, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but PLLCs by default are taxed as pass-through entities, and you can choose to be taxed as a partnership, a C corporation, or an S corporation. Whereas with PCs, the default is C corporation taxation, and you'll have to make a separate filing for that S corp classification with the IRS. So let's talk about annual meetings and corporate actions. So here again, PLLCs are quite lenient. You do not have to have an annual meeting. There's no requirement, and a lot of actions can be taken by written consent when it comes to making major decisions with respect to managing the PLLC. On the flip side, PCs must hold an annual meeting where the board of directors are elected, new officers are appointed, and any major actions taken by the PC must be adopted by shareholder and board approval. So there is that extra layer of paperwork, extra layer of actions that need to be taken when you are managing a PC. Now let's talk about ownership structure. So with PLLCs, the owners are called members, and they either hold membership interests or membership units, and the operating agreement will typically lay out how you can transfer those units or those interests. With the PC, it's a little bit more structured. The PC will issue stock to its shareholders. The owners are considered shareholders, and transferring shares, transferring stock requires typically board and shareholder approval. So again, there's always going to be that extra layer of action and approvals and consents when it comes to managing a PC. So let's talk about limited liability and the protections you get with a PLLC or a PC. Here, it's pretty similar. It's almost identical. So you will not be personally responsible for the business debts of your business or the malpractice of your partners. However, neither a PLLC or a PC will protect you from your own malpractice, okay? So if you engage in malpractice, if you're being sued, the PLLC or the PC cannot protect you. Now, presumably you have malpractice insurance that will help in some regard, but the PC or the PLLC will not shield you personally from any malpractice that you may commit. And one major difference that I want to distinguish between the PLLC and the PC is that with PCs, the only thing you're allowed to do is practice your profession. So if you're a lawyer, you can only provide legal services. If you're a doctor, you can only practice medicine. With PLLCs, there's a little bit more leniency. Now, obviously, the baseline is you're providing professional services. However, under the LLC law, a PLLC can do anything that an LLC can do. So what this means is that you can use that PLLC to provide additional services related to your license, certainly, right? So you could provide coaching services, or maybe you're providing educational offerings, teachings and things like that. You can do that with the PLLC, whereas the PC is very restrictive. You can only practice your profession. Lastly, we're going to touch on ongoing compliance. So with both a PC and a PLLC, you will have to file a biennial statement with the New York State Department of State every 2 years. Right now it costs $9. It's not expensive. In terms of keeping yourself up to date with the education department, while a PLLC does not necessarily have any requirements, if you are in certain fields such as engineering, geology, or land surveying, you will need to file a certificate of authorization renewal every 3 years with the education department. And that's true for PCs as well. There's a carve out specifically for those professions. Now, with PCs, there is an additional requirement that you file a triennial statement with the education department. That's every 3 years. So ultimately, what makes the most sense for you? I think if you are a single member business, a PLLC is probably the easiest route for you. It might be a little bit more expensive up front, but ultimately there aren't a lot of formal requirements and it's pretty straightforward. If you have a lot of members, you're looking to issue stock, you want a formal board, and you want to appoint officers and have that formal corporate structure in place, obviously I think a PC makes more sense. Now, you can have many members in a PLLC and that's fine. You can do that as well. But I think having that corporate structure makes sense if you're looking for that type of situation for your practice, and let's say you have multiple partners, sometimes that serves the benefit of your practice better than a PLLC can. So that's it. That's the video for today. If you like this video and you want to see more, please like, subscribe, and I'll keep making them.